Hi everyone, welcome to Warrior TV. I'm your host for Caroline Murphy-Bennis, and I have a really amazing guest for you this morning. His name is John Shearer, and he's here from Australia. So good morning or good evening for you, John, and welcome to Warrior TV. And we're delighted that you've taken some time out to come and talk to us all about your journey.
Yeah, good morning to you, Caroline, in Ireland, and it is evening here in Australia. It's fantastic that we're on opposite sides of the world and we can have a conversation, around mental health and whatever comes up. Yeah, so thank you.
You're very welcome. And I know you're as passionate about mental health as we are all here in Warrior TV and with the mental health warriors. And what we'd love to hear, I know you're a mindfulness master today, but what was the journey, John, that took you to this place? And your absolute passion for transforming people's lives. I know that you have done so successfully. If you could, start us off and tell us a little bit about the beginnings of your life and, maybe the challenges that you've come through to find you here today.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of critical dates. And the first one was 9th of June 1982, which was my father's 65th birthday. And I was driving a big truck on the Hume Highway in Australia, and out of the fog come the back of another truck, and all I remember doing was reefing on the steering wheel trying to avoid, but I didn't, and I died that day, and I was obviously revived at the scene and ended up in Kilmore Hospital, and that changed my life. At that time, I had a young family and married and driving a truck, and life was good. And then just like that, it was all taken away from me. And I crossed over, and there wasn't any white lights like you often hear about or anything like that. It was just nothing, black. But coming back was an experience which I still can't find words for. I don't think there is words. It was almost like I was coming from another galaxy. It was so slow and so peaceful. It was absolutely amazing. And I'll never forget that experience. But I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on at that time. And the guy who I was driving the truck for never had me insured. So as you can imagine, it was really, really tough. And I didn't handle it all that well. And later that year, I had what was diagnosed as psychosis, my first. I know now, and this is something that you can Google or the listeners can Google, spiritual emergency. That's what I had at that time, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was happening to me, and I was diagnosed as having psychosis. And so started a 15-year journey, if you want to call it that, where when I was trapped actually in the mental health system. And I do say trapped because I was. And 5 times I ended up in a mental health unit. I used to call them psych wards one time, but that's inappropriate these days. We call them mental health units. And today, or for the last 7 years, my wife and I have been going into mental health unit at the local hospital. And except for COVID kind of stopped that, but it'll come back again. And we conduct yarning circles for mental health patients. And it's actually, I often get the comment that it's more helpful having someone come in and having a yarn, which is a talk, and everybody has a talk in a yarning circle. We go around the circle and we have a topic for the day, and it's always mindfulness. but we talk about whatever comes up as well. But lived experience, I often get the comment that because of our lived experience, my wife has lived experience as well, they connect with it and they open up more freely as well. And when you give people a little spiritual perspective and some tools, some mindfulness tools to go away and practice, and it does take practice. I've seen some amazing transformations, that's for sure, over the years. But getting back to 1982 and that 15 years when I had, several spiritual emergencies. And finally, in 1997, and this is another critical date, if you like, or a date that changed my life, an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen for nearly 20 years, he was passing through town and he had what he called a spiritual prompt to come and knock on my door and share his story. And I haven't been able to find him since. He kept going, and I regularly check phone books and social media trying to find him. He may not even be alive, I don't know. But boy, he changed my life. And that date was to be World Mental Health Day, 10/10 October. Yeah. And 2 days later, I had what I can only describe as a spiritual awakening, and my whole life changed. Because at that time, I was told by mental health professionals that what I had was incurable and that I would never work again and I'd have to take medication for the rest of my life. And I believed them.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
They're the professionals, university trained professional psychiatrists and psychologists. And that kept me well and truly stuck,
Of course, you don't think
what we believe, don't we, Caroline?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know any different, and you think you're, like you say, in the hands of the professionals as such, and then you're trying to understand and integrate what's happened to you in you say, I like the way you framed it, your spiritual emergency, because I think with hindsight you probably realized that, and it took a while for that probably to realize itself within you. And how did you kind of find your way to mindfulness, and how did you come out of that I suppose, were you put on medication, and how did you find yourself take yourself away from that and into mindfulness?
Well, at that time, which is 24 years ago now, that's the place I was in. And then with my newfound belief, if you like, and it's a simple belief because we have love and fear. And I was really living out of fear and not love. And it was just a simple thing. Or another way that I like to put it is dark and light. I call those 15 my dark years, 15 dark years. And I call them dark because I was blind to the truth. I couldn't see. It was like I had blinkers on, and I could only really see what I was showing. So in 1997, I was able to step from the dark into the light, if you like. And my whole life changed. No more depression, no more medications, and everything changed, and that's what it's all about too. It's so important that we continually evolve and change all the time. Yeah. So, and I got my life back, and I was able to fulfill a childhood dream. And my wife and I opened a pool hall in the main street. We had 16 pool tables and a jukebox, and all 7 local high schools came in for school sport. And we did that for about 6 years or so. And then we moved north, and because of my wife's asthma. Yeah.
Okay.
So when we decided to move north, I thought, well, what was I going to do? And through my dark years, I really felt like there was a calling on my life. I felt there was a reason I was alive, firstly, because if you saw photos of the wreck, you wouldn't even give me a chance of being alive.
Wow.
My dog was killed, and the bonnet of the truck rolled up and finished where we were sitting. And somehow I was thrown clear. I don't know. I still don't know. And the motor of the truck actually left and finished about 50 yards down the road. It was pretty horrific. And, you know, for 15 years, I had, you know, in 1987, for example, I was very suicidal. I had a spiritual emergency once again. And I'll tell you a little story if you like, because
Yeah, go ahead.
in 1987, I awakened in May, which is going into winter here,
Okay.
a very cold morning, and I awakened about 4 a.m, and I was scared. I felt this fear. It wasn't like I had a nightmare or anything, but it seemed like a presence. So I went out in the backyard, and like I often did, and peed on the lemon tree and under the stars, you know, and I used to look out at the stars sometimes. But I had this fear come over me. So I went around the front of the house, and I was only in shorts and singlet and barefoot. And then this presence, it was, you know, pretty scary. I was very scared.
Okay.
And I started walking, and I walked and walked and walked, and it was probably about 5 kilometres, I guess, and around back streets and whatever else. I just kept walking, and this thing was behind me, and of course I was once again diagnosed with psychosis over this later on. But anyhow, I walked and walked, and I ended up down on the banks of the Murrumbidgee River in Wagga Wagga. This was the Murrumbidgee River. Is a bit of a special place for me. It's a bit of a spiritual place, if you like. But I ended up there, and then I was looking out over the river and down the river, and, you know, a little peace came over me momentarily, and then I had an epiphany. Do you know what an epiphany is, Caroline?
Yes, a moment of kind of clarity.
Yeah, sure. It's when something drops in your mind and you know it's truth because it drops in a powerful way.
Yeah.
And what dropped in my mind that morning, and it was at dawn by the time I got there, it was pretty much dawn, and was kill yourself or your youngest will die.
Wow.
And, you know, it was so powerful, so believable that I planned, you know, I picked out a gum tree right there and then.
Wow.
And I throw a rope over it because it looked like pretty easy to do, and planned my end. Yeah. And the only thing that stopped me was a tiny voice. And this tiny voice I had all along as well. You know, you'll get through this. It said, you'll get through this. And I heard that a number of times actually. You'll get through this. Yeah, well, later that day I ended up in the mental health unit again, and they drugged me out, and of course, you know, once again, no, it's all in your mind. It didn't happen. I know it happened. It was real to me. And there's a lot of people the same way, you know, and it is. Yeah. It's very real. Yeah. It's spiritual, and we don't really understand it. But once you sort of do,
I can understand what you're saying, because like that, I think in my own journey, I've kind of traveled that route. But I suppose in my family, there was psychosis as well. But I suppose I suppose I was also interested in the mind as well. And I suppose I think I maybe had a bit of distance from my own mind, where I was always interested in seeing it like as if it was a television screen. I could kind of watch it, you witness it as such. So I had the distance from, and I know what you're talking about, the different voices in the head as such, like, you know, it might be an ominous and a terrifying kind of ideas that might arise in your body, kind of as a sensation. But then you have, you know, a more beautiful presence that kind of arises within yourself. And I always say it's kind of like a candlelight. It's the only way I can describe it, as something like a beautiful candle that kind of, that you follow, and you kind of know in yourself that's true. Where, you know, I think I love the way that, you know, the simplicity that you bring it down to, John, when you talk about, you know, everything, you know, it's either love or fear. And, you know, those kind of, as I call, you know, I feel that we are, the human beings are on the brink of, you know, another discovery. And discovery is, you know, the discovery of our true selves. And to do that, we have to go into the inner landscape, and we have to find a way of navigating that, you know. And I think, you know, the kind of understanding of those kind of energies within our body as such, you know, is vitally important for that, isn't it? You know, to be able to understand, you know, yourself. You can have self-awareness and your self-knowledge, and especially, you know, when maybe the medical industry isn't really, it's starting to kind of come online with that kind of a deeper understanding, you know, with quantum physics, and, you know, at the higher levels, the understanding is kind of coming together with spirituality and science, but it's not kind of trickled down yet. But I think because there's people like yourselves that have transformed themselves, especially from something as kind of difficult and challenging as schizophrenia, to kind of be able to transform yourself in your own journey, and then to be able to turn around and help that and transform others. It's a really a fantastic testament to what is possible for healing, you know, mental health issues. And John, just saying that Kerry and is here to say hello to you, and Adam and Kerry Bear, they're all welcoming you from the Rainbow, from the Warrior Mental Health Warrior team. And Adam is wondering about, you know, it says, what does the mindset look like from someone who lives with psychosis? You know, so I suppose you're kind of explaining that as such, like maybe in an episode you've had where it's the kind of the inner voices, you know, and just how did you move past that then, John, from, you know, that last, you were saying, I love the way you say this, the spiritual emergency. How did you move on from there and follow that more beautiful voice?
Well, I didn't, because it was to be another 10 years from that time.
Wow. Okay.
Before, you know, I got, my friend had the spiritual prompt and come and knocked on my door and changed my life by giving me spiritual perspective.
Okay.
Amazing. And, you know, I was just stuck because I didn't have the answers. I was on a bit of a quest, though, I should say. And, you know, because I wanted answers. Why was I alive? Why am I here? I really felt there was a reason why I was alive, and that I had a purpose. I didn't know what it was at that time. I'm thankful for my 15 dark years now, because it's helped make me who I am today.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so thankful for it, even though they were very, very tough.
And John, I think that, you know, sometimes when you come through those parts, those dark years, they're meant to be something that you turn around or be able to empathize and really have the experience to help people in that situation, you know, and guide them out of it as such, you know. So, you know, if you hadn't had that lived experience, you wouldn't be as powerful today as a coach as such, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I often ask the question when I talk to groups, you know, do we need to come through the dark night of the soul to be able to walk in the light? And it's an emphatic yes. You know, I get all the time, yes, we do, because otherwise, how do you know what the light is if you haven't experienced the dark? Yeah, it's quite amazing. You know, I've really only had 2 epiphanies like that, and that was the dark one, no doubt, which nearly ended my life. It was close.
Mm-hmm.
But early in 1998, after my spiritual awakening, this is, and early one morning at dawn, because I'm a bit of a dawn person, and I had another epiphany, and this one was just as powerful, and it came into my mind: help the mentally ill, just like that. And at that time, I remember throwing my arms in the air, and I said, "But I'm one of them." That seemed so ridiculous to me. What was I going to do? Here I was at that time, just come out of 15 years of being institutionalized, 5 times on 5 different occasions. But I must say, I wasn't always unwell, and I had times when I was very well, too well actually, because I was diagnosed with manic depressive illness, they used to call it back then. But it's come a long way now, and if you look through the DSM today, the diagnostic manual that psychiatrists use, you won't see the word illness because they've been challenged on it. And we've really got to drop that word too. If we're going to be serious, and I know you warriors are serious about stopping the stigma.
Yes,
I think
that's the
one
mission.
way. That's one way of doing it. Yeah, they call it disorders now, which is closer to the truth, because illness has never been proven, Yeah. In fact, the opposite has probably been proven more, looking at it scientifically. Yeah. So manic depressive illness became bipolar disorder. So, and even that puts a little different light on it, I guess. And I can see there's reasons for diagnosis. It can be helpful. And a lot of people, when they do get a diagnosis, they have greater understanding of what's going on. So, it's good. But really, we're being judged.
Yeah, well,
In my 15 years, was anyone willing to listen to me at all? I have whatever experience it was at that time. No one wanted to listen. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for sharing our stories. And that's why I'm very passionate about sharing my stories, just as my friend shared his story with me in 1997. And and put me on a path. I'm so thankful for that. I hope I find him again one day, but yeah.
He might be watching us just now. You never know.
You never know.
He'll say, "There's John."
Everything in its time. And I know things happen in universe time, not in ours. That's why we need to be patient sometimes. But in 1998, getting back to help the mentally ill, that just seemed so ridiculous to me at the time. What could I do? But that sort of became my thing, if you like, the reason why I was alive, my purpose. So I sort of started, even at that time, every morning I awaken, and I still to this day do this too. And today I say, "Good morning, soul. What are we doing today?" And soul is an ancient Roman word for the sun, because I see the sun as my source energy. That's just me. That's the light for me. Soul. Yeah. What are we doing today? And then I pause my mind, silence my mind just for a few seconds, and see what pops in. And that's mindful practice. It's being aware of what your mind is doing. It's about connecting with your source, because at our core, we are energy. And once we develop a relationship or develop a connection with our source, wow, and I've been that way for many, many years now, 12 years actually, because 2009 is the year we decided to move north because of my wife's asthma. And I thought, well, what was I going to do? So what I did do, and I started to say before, those 15 years, I wasn't always unwell. There was times when I was well, and I did different courses, front wheel counselling, where you take the steering wheel of your life, and youth counselling. I worked in juvenile justice for a time, and again for 10 years altogether before I retired. And yeah, so I was a trained counsellor. So what was I going to do when we moved north to where we are now in Grafton, New South Wales? And we were in Wagga Wagga, which is a much colder place further south. And what I did do is start searching the internet, or surfing the internet, they call it, to see what the latest therapies were, what the latest things in mental health were. And when you do surf the internet, you find what you're looking for, because you follow your prompts. Oh yeah, I'll click on that and this and that, and you end up where you're meant to end up. Yeah, I really believe that.
Yes.
Anyhow, I found a book written by an Australian doctor, Dr. Russ Harris, and he's quite well known in the UK as well. And he wrote a book called The Happiness Trap. You may have heard of it, but I highly recommend it. He's actually just launched. I got an email from him the other day, and he's updated it. It's got 40% new material in it, so I'll probably get that as well. But The Happiness Trap, and it's a book about ACT therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. And I bought the book, and and found that it's a mindfulness-based therapy, like most modern therapies are, like RFT, relational frame theory, and also CBT is very well known, cognitive behavior therapy. They're all mindfulness-based therapies, and it was mindfulness that I fell in love with, and this is in 2009. And I used to say back then, mindfulness will change the world one day. And today I say mindfulness is changing the world.
It is,
And we had this conversation earlier that, well, just recently, a very religious person said to me, Jesus is coming. And I said, fantastic. I said, but are you aware that there is about 1 million Jesuses on the planet right now? People with Christ consciousness, people with connection with their Father, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. With that same consciousness as what Jesus had. And oh boy, I got in a lot of trouble over that. But and I really do believe today the world is waking up. We don't hear about it on the news. That's for sure. But there's so many beautiful people out there who are wanting to make a difference. Like you, Caroline, and probably all the warriors in this group as well.
And it's amazing to connect people, to get connected with people like that. And I love what you say, John, about the sun, because the sun for me is one of my big kind of symbols as such that I use in all my books. And I call it, when you talk about being present, I call it the presence of the loving sun. So it's just kind of like the feeling of being present in the moment is like the presence of the loving sun, which I suppose in our Irish Celtic spirituality, the sun is an icon as well, because we have Newgrain, it's built around the sun, the solstice, so it kind of comes in to the passage grave at a certain point in just once a year. The whole tomb is designed around the rising of the sun, and it comes into the tomb and it penetrates down into the inner chamber. And I feel that's what's happening here. It's like the sun is penetrating into the inner chamber, into our, and to kind of to I suppose bring us back into life, like, isn't it? And that's like, it's, I suppose what you're talking about is so powerful, because I suppose the idea of mindfulness is, obviously to kind of calm us down, help us with our kind of mental health kind of imbalances, I like to say. I'm kind of passionate about how it's worded as well, how people talk, because I just feel it's kind of like basically keeping yourself balanced. And then when you're balanced, then you can access the source of life, you know, you can within yourself. So you start to kind of become more empowered in the world, and then you find your purpose. And I think finding your purpose is a massive boost to your energy and to your vitality, your natural vitality. And when you've kind of locked into your natural vitality, it starts to kind of transform your body nearly, you know. And the more you it's kind of like it grows within you, and then you become a larger force for good in the world. And you know, it's amazing when you start to connect with community then, and those communities come together. You know, it's going to be like a bushfire, I think, you know, and it's going to just, you know, really has a transformational effect, not just on the individual, but across the world. And, you know, the fact that, you know, the lockdown and, you know, we have these amazing technologies to bring us together and to kind of, you know, to marry those ideas, and it really makes it like a strong force. And, you know, it's only growing, and it's just very enriching for me to listen to your story and to listen to your, you know, your transformation and the message that you're spreading with your own personal story, your challenges, and then also how you've, you know, used mindfulness practices on a daily basis to maintain your health as well as to helping others, you know. So thank you so much for that, and your books as well. What books do you have that you published, John, that you could tell us about? I'd be really interested to hear.
This book was being published in America. It's not being published by anybody at the present time. I'm going to get it printed again next year, and it'll be a better version. But you'll see Mindful Actions. This is a book that happened almost by accident in 2014. And you might see I put the ripple effect on the cover, because
yes,
I often say that it is always my hope that the people who are touched by my ripple then create a ripple of their own. And that way we can change the world one person at a time. We can.
Absolutely.
And we are. And I've seen people who have done my courses or had a session with me or whatever, gone out and developed their mindful practice, found their purpose. And I often say the number one antidote for depression is finding your purpose. You are spot on, Carolyn. Yeah. And my second book, which I've come out about 12 months ago now, and I've been delivering this as a course, a mentoring service, actually, 52 weeks.
Okay.
And every Friday I send out a mindful insight. That's what it's called, mindful insights. And the service, people phone me or Zoom or Skype with me regularly, and it's a 12-month course, because it takes a while. It's not an overnight fix, you know.
Exactly.
I'm not really trying to fix anything, because there's nothing wrong to start with. Once people sort of realize that, that's the truth. But yeah, and I just love it. And it always happens at some point through the 52 weeks when the penny drops and they say, John, I get it now, you know, and the penny drops, boom. And that's the moment when they kind of awaken. And that's when everything starts to change, you know. It's all very slow, of course. But and that's really only available on my website. But
are they available?
I'm happy to give away a copy of this. I'll share a link to it if you like.
Oh, excellent. Do, yeah.
It happened almost by accident, because in 2014, one morning, like every morning, what are we doing today, Sol? And what came to me to do was create a Facebook event. And I'll just go back a little bit to 1998, early, when I had that health the mentally ill thing, which seemed so absurd, actually, at that time. I could never envisage that I would be writing 2 books and have over 1 million people like my Facebook pages, Mindfulness Master and Spiritual Master. That's just, you know, out of this world. Me. Hello. You know, nothing special. And just come out of 15 years of being told I'm mentally ill, kind of thing. So there's hope for everybody once they get proper perspective on their experience, their spiritual experience, and start developing a mindful practice, which is an awareness practice, it's in all religions in some form or another. And it's an action practice. It's nothing new. And you find it in every culture as well. And even here in Australia, there's different dialects, Aboriginal language around Australia. And in the northern part of Australia, and I talk about a little bit of it in my book too, there's a word Dadiri. And Dadiri is the lady who's made it kind of famous, she said it's a gift for the Australian people. And around where I live on the East Coast, in Bundjalung language, it's Ghana, G-A-N'-N-A, Ghana. Ghana practice. And these are ancient practices, and the Aboriginal culture is the oldest in the world. They don't know how old, 40 to 60,000 years old, without any other cultures coming in. So it was just Australia is an island, as you know. That's it. So it's an old culture. But Ghana practice, or the Dadiri, and there is other words too, is a deep listening practice that's been used to overcome trauma. And every person that's ever come to me, honestly, has trauma. We all do. And so take a death in the family, for example, getting back to the Aboriginal culture. There's a death in the family, they're traumatized. What do? They go to the spiritual guru of the tribe. And every tribe had one. And it's the same as all cultures around the world. When you go right back, they all had a guru they could go to, someone who is awakened. I don't know whether we're chosen for this or whether, I don't know. I haven't got the answers, but they go to the spiritual guru and they're taught Ghana practice, which is going bush. They're sent into the bush, into nature, in other words, to practice deep listening, which is listening beyond our thoughts. And it's amazing when we do this, when we do go into nature, and whatever it is on our mind, because we can't stop our thoughts, but we can pause them and we can listen beyond them as well. And we get synchronization, if you like. Synchronicity. It's a very real thing. And push on your own, and you got something on your mind. An animal might run out of the bush, or two birds might land on a branch near you, and you get answers as long as you're aware. And that's what mindfulness is. It's awareness. And so simple, it's so powerful.
I love that, John. I love that, John, so much because, I don't know if I talked about it earlier on with you, but that when I felt I had that calling, and it was to go back into the wilderness, into the west of Ireland to renovate a cottage. And like that, it's exactly how you described the Aborigines, where I just went into deep listening in nature. And I felt it was kind of, I had taught design principles, but this was kind of like the universal principles of nature was start to speak to me. It was like as if it was a really close relationship, and I started to get all these really massive insights from the intelligence of life as such. It was like there was no barrier as such, and it was such an enriching time. It was like as if you entered true intelligence, and there was no, the way I suppose is so noisy in our cultures today, and then that adds to the noisiness in our minds. And it's amazing the power of, I can't underestimate the power of that kind of silence, or kind of getting to that silent space and what can come from that. And it's fabulous. I love to hear these ancient wisdom traditions around the world all speaking the same language. It's something that's just, it's part of who we are, because it's, we are nature, we're nature as well. And it's just that we've forgotten that we're actually an element of nature, and we're part of the planet, And when you're talking about synchronicity, all it is us coming back into our true nature and into harmony with life again, because we're supposed to be synchronized with, like the animals and about like everything else within the whole system of life as such, So, awakening is really, and that kind of waking up to yourself is more about connecting to the deeper sense of yourself, isn't it? And it's fabulous to hear those words from the Aborigines. Like you said, that hasn't been adulterated by any other culture. It's been pure for, how many, millenniums, whatever. It's amazing that you're kind of even bringing that out into the world and speaking to that and giving that a voice within your kind of practice, and like I suppose people think that mindfulness is new, but it's actually not. It's ancient, isn't it? Yeah, I love it.
Exactly right, Caroline. And my grandmother was Aboriginal.
Was she?
Yeah, on my father's side, they come out from Scotland in 1852, and I was born in 1952. But my grandmother, she was Aboriginal, or actually she was half Aboriginal, if you like. Her father was Scottish, and her mother was Aboriginal, and she was taken away from her mother because that's what they did back in those days. And she was placed in a white family to be raised as a maid.
Wow.
And she was an angry woman because she wasn't black enough to be black and she wasn't white enough to be white. She didn't fit in, and she grew up with this trauma of being taken away from her family. And she was an angry woman. And the result of that was my mother was an angry woman as well, And it's like a generational trauma, which is getting handed down. And I'm still seeing this in Aboriginal communities today. And they've got all sorts of alcohol and drug problems and all sorts of things because of this generational trauma.
Yes.
And everybody is trying to fix it. But what they really need to do is start teaching them their own culture, because
absolutely,
it's very sad, but they've kind of lost sight of it, and it's not really taught anymore. It's kind of sad, but we've got to focus on the trauma, the thing that's causing all these problems, rather than trying to fix the problems.
Yes.
You see what?
It's like bringing light into the dark areas, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, being brave enough to look into the areas that we don't want to see, And how do you, John, if someone comes to you with, psychosis, or they're suffering with those kind of voices as such, like how do you start to bring them out of that? How would you start to coach them in your practice? It seems like such a massive. It's the first time I've heard somebody using mindfulness in that area. It'd be amazing to find out, like, how do you to start to retrain somebody's mind with mindfulness.
Everyone is different, so I never have any preconceived ideas or use other people's theories or therapies, because everyone is different. So a couple of things that come to mind. There was a young Aboriginal boy in juvenile justice, because I worked there as a mentor for 10 years before I retired, and he had a spiritual presence in his room, and he was pretty terrified, and he wasn't getting any sense out of the centre psychologist, of course. All they really want to do is medicate him. And a sad thing is, there was 15 boys, and probably 12 of them are Aboriginal in a unit, and where I was mentoring. And I would say on average over the 10 years, 9 out of the 15 were medicated. And they're just kids. I'm talking about between 12 and 18 years old. It's a shocking thing. anyhow, this particular boy, he was having this spiritual experience, and when I explained to him that it was real, and I listened to him, and he told me all about it and what was happening, and then I taught him Ghana practice, mindfulness,
Okay.
and I used to hand out my book for him. It's a very simple little book, this one, and he started to develop his practice of becoming present and connecting with it and making it his friend. Yeah. And in no time at all, he was at peace with it.
Wonderful.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Listening is such a powerful thing. And when I say listening, I'm talking about mindful listening, which is listening with full presence. Another thing that comes to mind in juvenile justice, I often tell this story because it's a good one and it's a true one. There was a boy sitting in the quadrangle on his own. He was just sitting down. He had his head down. He was obviously deep in thought. So I wandered down and sat next to him. And I sat there for 20 minutes and I never said a word. But I did nod, and just to show I was listening. And he started talking. And then, he talked his way into his own solution.
Really?
And all I did was listen. And then I got up and started to walk away at the end of it. And he said, thanks. And so I turned around and looked at him. And he said, that's the best conversation I've ever had. And I never said a word.
Yeah. You just lended him your presence, your loving presence, the presence of your loving son, that listening, it's amazing, isn't it? It's so simple. So effective.
Yeah. And another thing that comes to mind, a guy came to me and signed up for my 52-week course, and he's doing great guns now. He's back working and got his life back. But he was hearing voices, and the voices weren't nice. We all have an inner critic, the one. Yeah. Well, sometimes it's a little more than that with some people, and they actually hear their inner critic, and it's they hear it as a voice, and it's a similar thing. And once I was able to give him, some spiritual perspective around what was happening for him, he was able to get his life back. And once again, he made that, whatever it was, his friend. Okay. Yeah. And it's very possible. And someone famous once said that the best way to defeat your enemies is make them your friends. It was one of the early American presidents, actually. I forget which one. But it's so true. And it's the same because I really believe our mind is, we've got a brain. We understand the function of a brain. It allows us to dance and do all sorts of things without even thinking about it. We do it unconsciously, if you like, or subconsciously. The brain has a beautiful function. It keeps our heart ticking. It does all sorts of things, all wonderful things. But the mind is a different beast, if you like, or it can be a beast. And I really believe that our minds are both receivers and transmitters. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And when we're fully present with people, they sense that, just like we sense if they're fully present with us, because we know when we're talking to someone and they're thinking about something else, they're just not home, are they? And we sense it. Yeah. And also, I believe our minds are receivers. And I really believe we can receive both dark and light. Both. And then it's up to us then. We always have a choice of what to do with that. And that's how I got my life back 24 years ago. Because, I would, whatever was dropping in my mind, I'd say, oh, no, that's from the dark side. I'm not going there. That's in the fear realm. No, I don't want anything to do with that. I'm going to walk in love. I choose to walk in love. In the light. And wow. When we start doing that, It's amazing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether it's like there's a spiritual game of chess going on. I don't really think there is. I think that we're challenged, or our journey on this earth somehow. Things are sent to test us, and we either come through or we don't we? But,
Yeah.
It's
I love the way.
What I'm saying. But.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. I think you actually described it really well, and because it's difficult to put into words, absolutely. But I love the way you've described that. That the receiver and the dark and light, and then I suppose we're the ones to choose what to listen to and how to act and where to act from, as such. Isn't it? And John, I just absolutely really loved your time here with us, and I've been asked by the mental health team, would you like to come on again another time to come in and talk again with us about, because I think it's the tip of the iceberg in all your knowledge and your experience, and it's fantastic to hear the story of you coming through kind of such dark times, but then, like you said, turning towards the light and then being able to kind of help people navigate their own kind of inner landscapes and to find, peace and to come into harmony, back into harmony with themselves, and then back into harmony with life. And where can people get in touch with you? Do you have a website?
If you Google "Be Mindful, Pause, Connect," and that's how I've simplified over 12,000 hours of study. 9,000 hours of study over 12 years. And that's how I've simplified it, because I'm a huge fan of simplicity. Be mindful.
Yes.
That's our heart instruction to our mind we use. Anytime we notice we're being mindless, or we're in the past or the future or just far away, we tell our mind, we take control of our mind, if you like, rather than our mind controlling us. Be mindful, pause. It only takes a few seconds. We pause and we connect. We connect with where we are using our 5 senses. We connect with who we're with full presence, and we connect with our source. And once we start connecting regularly every day, and even throughout our day, with that nothingness, well, that's where everything is. And it's amazing the power of the pause when we connect with our source, just what drops in, the next step, or, it activates our creativity, and it turns on our intuition. So they can Google "Be Mindful, Pause, Connect." I've made it my thing for many years, and you'll find me. Or you can go to my website, johnshearer.xyz. Will find me. Or Mindfulness Master on Facebook, or Spiritual Master on Facebook. You'll find, it's dropped just under 1 million, I think, now.
Oh, that's amazing.
But,
that's fantastic. You were definitely on purpose, John. That was to reach so many people, That's a fantastic achievement, and I'm so thrilled to have met you. And definitely would love to have you on again for some more maybe panel discussions with other people, and to get your input would be really amazing. And it's been an honor to sit with you and be in presence with you for this interview. And thank you to all the people who've been watching and listening to us. And I'd like to welcome them all to stay tuned to Warrior TV, because we have the fabulous Kerry Duval and Kerry Burr for the coffee morning that's coming up at 11 o'clock. So stay tuned for their very special guest. And it's been an honor to have you viewing and listening to our conversation, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, Caroline. Bye.